Okay, thank you all. We're going to continue with the conversation here. If we could have you take any conversations you're having into the foyer, I would appreciate it. Also, when you have questions for the panelists, just ask the moderator through the app, and I will be sure to ask them of our moderators. Give you all 1 second before we introduce our panelists. And if we could be respectful of their time, I would appreciate it. Awesome. So we're going to use the next 20 minutes to talk about the Big Ten's relationship and Discover's relationship with the Big Ten and where it started, how's it going, and where it's going. So I'm going to ask the panelists to please introduce themselves. Larry, I'll start with you.
Larry Mann, partner and executive vice president with rEvolution. Excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
You're the agency on the...
Agency of record for Discover and helps them on the activation and negotiation with the sponsorship of the Big Ten.
Great. John.
Yep. John Shaver, senior manager at Discover on all things sponsorships and branded content.
Great. Tyler.
Tyler Cooper, oversee corporate partnerships at the Big Ten Conference.
Amy Adams, I am also at Discover, now part of Capital One, I'll say. John missed that point.
It's new.
No questions, please, on that. I oversee media and sponsorships.
And so Chicago, Chicago, Chicago. So there's a theme here. But talk about why it started in 2000, I believe 17, and what Discover, Amy, I'll start with you, and John, what Discover found valuable about the Big Ten and why the initial outlay into the basketball championship, I believe, and football. Football,
yeah. I mean, first, it's undeniable how important sports plays a role in our marketing mix overall. So we've continued to see positive results from a sports standpoint, whether it's even just from a media standpoint and how it helps our creative breakthrough. We've continued to see positive results in our marketing mix, and I know it's not always easy to piece that out, but it's a critical part, as I'm sure for most brands here. And as we were looking in 2017 from a brand standpoint, we're another financial service heavy panel up here, but it certainly is a commoditized category, and so we were constantly keeping an eye on what sports were out there, what conferences and leagues that if they came available, who would we want to partner with? The Big Ten became available, and it was very important for us to partner with them. Our audience, both from a prospecting standpoint and our card members, over-indexed, so it became a unique opportunity for us to reach unique audiences relative to the rest of our sports and marketing mix. But really, one of the main reasons, too, was it made a lot of sense economically when the signature asset was also being proposed to be the sponsor of the championship football game. And so that asset was an anchor of our deal, and it really started, the partnership to date. We were the first and only sponsor of the champ game, and we have continued to think about it as how do we grow the partnership. The other reason was the Big Ten was clearly on a growth trajectory path, and I'm looking at Tyler here, because it was very clear that they were going to go from, really a Midwest conference to kind of a national reach player for us too. So that was important, and as we laid out our strategy so we could see, we have this important asset, and then over time, how do we make sure we amplify that every year in a bigger and greater way, but what other assets do we need to keep an eye on with the Big Ten so that we have kind of a first opportunity to take advantage of those, whether it's basketball or volleyball or other things that might come up.
Were you surprised, Amy and John, about the attributes of the Discover target audience matching up well with kind of the Big Ten college demographic?
I don't think we were surprised. Listen, our brand is headquartered here in Chicago. We're anchored in the Midwest, but we are a national brand. And when you think about Big Ten sometimes, and really college conferences in general, right? You think, okay, I'm reaching students, and sometimes you have to explain to your executives, yes, it's important to reach students, I want to reach alumni, but I want to reach fans in general.
Right.
So it just made a lot of
other points on how the deal started.
Actually, I think Larry was the only one that was actually around when it started. We had a previous relationship too with the Orange Bowl. It was a big title sponsorship that we had back in the day, and then the team made the strategic decision to walk away from that for various reasons, which left a little bit of a gap in the sports sponsorship space, right? And so I don't want to know if it was a perfect storm, because again, I wasn't necessarily around when the decision was made, but I think some of the similarities between our brand and how we represent ourselves and what the Big Ten stood for at the time, it became like the perfect opportunity for us to jump back into the college space, but in a way that felt very synergistic with our strategy and where we wanted to go. And then as Amy kind of mentioned, as they've grown, it's allowed us to kind of realize more of our national strategy, and it's been a nice partnerships that evolved over time on both fronts.
Yeah, and so many firsts in the last 10 years too. First ever credit card, first ever title sponsor of our football championship game, moving from presenting to title, and first ever brand to have their logo on both of our football field and basketball courts.
How much convincing did that take?
I would say,
Which side?
I know. I was actually thinking of the Big Ten side.
Yes, I was too.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, we're getting a little more aggressive on the commercial space, obviously the state of college athletics now, and we'd always had a clean basketball court until a year ago, and asked Discover to step up and have that position, and it's been a wild ride.
And there's more openness for collegiate leaders to look at commercial inventory.
Correct, and I think just to go back one point about the beginning of the championship, because I was the only one on this stage that was around that at that time, the media piece was a key component, and when Fox took over that and was going to broadcast that in a primetime position on a Saturday night, and the conference decided to move to the direction of having a championship game, which you got to remember was almost 10 years ago, and to have all that come together has been great. And then obviously the expansion with the conference and continuing with their media partners, and then of course Discover partnering with Fox and doing so much with Fox around Big Noon and those types of things.
I will say having that championship football game in Indy really was a huge, flag in the ground for college sports. And so you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say your question on how hard or easy
Right.
is it to make the decision on, expanding into basketball. And this is where the partnership and multi-year partnerships come into play, since we have such a strong relationship. If we were a first-time partner, I don't think we would have gotten the first look opportunity at that as we did. And I mean, it's undifferentiated. I mean, there's no one else on the court except us, And so like that is a really great opportunity that pays off and earned impressions beyond the cost of it that comes through.
So you have to keep the Big Ten championship strong and relevant, right?
Yeah, and we're moving the basketball tournaments around now. So next year is going to be here in Chicago at the United Center. We're going to go to Vegas, Indianapolis, and Detroit over the next couple of years to keep the markets fresh. Football is going to stay in Indianapolis till 2028.
Right, but with the CFP, there's a lot of questions about the value of championship games, but it will be, and it should be. In terms of like the idea of the expansion of the conference, Amy, maybe for you, how important was that in terms for Discover to know that the Big Ten was going to expand outside of just being a Midwest conference?
Well, I mean, it's very, first of all, we were a partner before the expansion, right? So we believed in the conference before that and the value of the fan base. But as we're a growing brand and wanting to grow, we want to continue to drive unique reach. So it became a really almost more of a benefit, to be honest, as we're a longstanding partner versus a critical component as we, as deals come up. It's a critical piece in how we evaluate the deals too, and the rights deals, because we have to prove to our C-level executives that Big Ten still makes a lot of sense. And of course we can talk about the audience all day, but that was an important piece because we could talk about a new, bigger audience now that we weren't able to necessarily reach previously.
I mean, the footprint is coast to coast.
Yes.
Right. 9.4 million alumni right now, and I feel like people feel differently about their colleges than they do a pro team, and we've seen that. We also, I think Discover's done a great job with kind of this hub and spoke model of the conference and our 18 schools. So we're obviously coast to coast, going top 3 media markets, New York, LA, and Chicago with our 18 schools. And I think when you look at a typical Saturday in the Big Ten with our media rights agreement now, you have Fox, Big Noon at 12 o'clock, you have CBS at 3:30, replacing the SEC, you have NBC Primetime, so you have those 3 national networks where Discover is integrated into every single one of them, and you've done a great job bridging sponsorship and media. And then you look at the Big Ten network, which we have 2 games of all 18 schools, where you guys can do a lot more, amplify a lot more with social and linear. It's really just done a great job bridging those two.
And I'll just really quickly say, the one thing with rights, too often brands secure rights and then don't think, to I think your point earlier, around the media around that. So like for us, we don't have retail, we don't have a lot of places to put these rights, right? So we have to buy the media to surround it, to take advantage of that, to buy the connection and relevancy with the fans.
The connection is the piece, I think. Like, we've always viewed the Big Ten as really a national play, like Michigan, Ohio State, like they're going to draw a national audience. But I think the connection point now is brought into like the West Coast, where we haven't really had an opportunity on a more meaningful level to communicate, right? It's been basically ads and games. And so whether that's like Oregon at the champ game this year, where we got to talk to Oregon fans for the first time, or some of what our creative team is doing with social, right? There's a whole slew of stories in half the country that we've never been able to actually talk to on a little bit of a deeper level. That is exciting now because it opens up the possibilities in that with them.
You know, I always argue that Fox's really rollout of Big Noon was really paramount to some of the interest and attraction to the Big Ten. I think what they've done is great.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, for us, it was a great platform to build a creative piece and activation as we go to a lot of their sites on Saturday mornings with our activation footprint. And, you know, one of the things that has been so impactful is obviously at the highest level for Discover, they understood that they were reaching people. But what rEvolution really jumped in to help them is to help them connect with those consumers on site. And I think that you mentioned, Abe, the Big Noon kickoff, which was a really key piece of bringing this whole thing to life and, you know, being on site with those active crowds Saturday mornings. And then, of course, we use that as a lead up to huge activation at the football championship game in Indianapolis, and all roads lead to Indianapolis. And so we do that, and then, of course, the activations at Big Ten basketball, and really excited to be back in Chicago this year in Discover's hometown.
Questions here, a couple of good ones from the audience. When it comes to the brand decision, when it comes to college sports, you could go deep or wide. Which is your preference? Probably for the two brand people.
Yeah, I would say deep. We really have kind of two tentpole sponsorships, and our strategy to date has been maximize as much value out of those as humanly possible. And so football has kind of always been this asset we've had with the Big Ten, but the primary emphasis for us the last couple of years, as they were kind of alluding to, is as the Big Ten spans their coverage of certain Olympic sports or with basketball, right? It's like part of our strategy is paying off, you know, fandoms big and small, as we like to say, and it's going beyond that, beyond football and beyond basketball and into some other sports where you can connect a little bit more on a one-to-one basis. So our strategy has certainly been built on going deep versus just trying to cast a little bit of a wider net by looking at new opportunities. And, you know, I think where we've done a good job of building in places like football, we're just kicking the tires on some of the Olympic sports, and with some of the new opportunities that they have as well, from leaning more into like the student first association of athletes as entities within the organization.
I would just say that I think deep can mean different things for depending on what sponsorship or league you're talking about, because like, you know, we're an NHL sponsor as well, and to us going deep means surround everything we can when it comes to hockey, both nationally and, you know, locally or community opportunities too. And with Big Ten, going deep meant how do we expand into more sports within Big Ten too. So,
and to that point, NHL partner and Winter Classic, you've always been around as well, Discover, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a nice timeline for the calendar. And what he talked about in terms of other things at the Big Ten, I mean, everyone knows, but what, 90,000 for a Nebraska volleyball game?
Yeah, I mean, the craziest thing to me, I've been here 3 years, and growing up in the New York area, the power of our Olympic sports has been the most eye-opening thing to me.
All right, yeah.
So volleyball, wrestling, some of these classic, you know, you start going west of Pennsylvania, and it's wild, the passion around volleyball and wrestling, really. And so we're identifying volleyball as one of those key focus areas heading into the future with the Discover partnership. But yeah, coming off the day in Nebraska with 92,003 people in the football stadium watching a volleyball match, it was actually the largest women's sporting event in the history of the world, which is just wild.
What do you think is the most underrated, underappreciated sport on campus right now? If I'm a brand and I'm placing a bet.
I mean, I know it's women's basketball and women's volleyball, I think, are the two.
And yeah, I would agree. I would say softball's still a growth sport.
Yeah. So. Women's volleyball in particular, I think just it's the one that I don't think gets the attention and softball. I mean, I think just seeing what just happened this past week on the Women's College World Series. But I think it's also fascinating when you ask that question about going deep. You know, Discover has really lent in with the Big Ten, and to the Big Ten's credit, you know, it's really important in today's environment for the conferences to provide platforms for these brands to lean in. And that's something that, you know, makes this partnership so strong. Because if they're, you know, a lot of these conferences today, obviously revenue is a really important piece, but if they're not providing the assets, it's really hard for brands like Amy mentioned to be able to, you know, determine an ROI. And so that's one thing that really makes this partnership strong as we continue to grow with the conference. And we, like the first look on the basketball, which we referenced, huge opportunity, but it's also because the conference brought that to Discover. And I think this is a really great example of a brand and a conference really working together to enhance what they're trying to accomplish.
Good question here from the audience. Is the plan to continue to use Jennifer Coolidge in Discover advertising?
No, we're going to use Amy Adams.
You'll continue to see her on.
She's been fun to work with?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. We are trying to diversify our message too, though, right? So like last year.
I mean, it certainly looks it, right. In terms of, I mean, it's a different approach there for Discover using her and the creative there.
Yeah, and we're also trying to make sure we're tailoring our message to the environment, right? So we used Matt Leinart in a spot that ran consistently across college football. Again, trying to create connectivity to everything. We have a big noon kickoff sponsorship, right? Former college football star. So it's a balance between Jennifer, who you'll continue to see, and then also us being a little bit more tailored with the message to sports-specific talent, like you might see Matt again this fall.
KPIs that you look for, what would they be?
Well, as a brand, from a sponsorship standpoint, we're consistently trying to drive consideration, full funnel with our prospects all the way into card members to drive sales. Doing that and proving that out can be challenging. So we have built kind of an ROI model with our rEvolution partners. Again, going back to every year, we try to evaluate kind of pre-season, post-season, did we actually drive consideration with different audience groups? And then we kind of correlate that all the way down to, you know, new accounts and sales, and is it paying back according to, you know, what I'm putting into it from an expense standpoint. So it's a pretty robust measurement plan. Of course, we look and use third-party partners too to even look at the media valuation too and the extra earned impressions that we get. And that's important just to make sure, like, you know, the value of the media is there and the value of the rights coming back, but ultimately it's coming back to ROI.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of properties are only shielded from their agency's secret sauce around ROI models.
Totally.
And Larry and rEvolution invited us to come sit down for a couple hours and have them walk us through their model, and just kind of opened up under the hood of how Discover looks at ROI. And I mean, we've never seen that from a brand before. So really cool for us to be able to do that.
You know, I came from NACTA earlier this week, and Tyler, I guess I'll start with you, but the brand side would be interesting. A conversation at a small panel was that brands underestimate the value of college sports from a sponsorship point of view because of the depth of the alumni, because of the depth of the fan base, the generational fan bases. I mean, from the college perspective, do you feel that, or do you feel that brands are more open and interested and able to activate around college?
Yeah, I mean, college is a model where it's kind of upside down with the MMRs, right? So you have all of these third parties on all 18 campuses selling the local sponsorship rights. And so, you know, we're looking at from the hub and spoke, as I said about before, and just trying to find other ways to leverage both campus IP and conference IP and creating new events, more neutral site events because of our coast-to-coast footprint. And really trying to combat that.
Well, Larry, what would you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, brands today, I mean, the college space has gotten so vast and there's so many ways to go into it that as partners, and I know there's a lot of folks in this room that, you know, are involved on the rights holder side, and I think it's really important, again, to provide that platform for brands, because brands are leaning in because they want to connect with these consumers, and college is such a vast area, and you're seeing so much change, and it's going to continue, and brands do want to lean in, and, you know, not everyone can afford, you know, a CFP type partnership.
Right.
So they need to be able to lean in at women's volleyball or other Olympic sports, or, you know, whichever platform, and I think it's really important to have partners and rights holders working together on that.
For the brand people, what's next at Discover? What would be on the to-do list for 25 and 26?
Yeah, well, I mentioned just scratching the surface in some of the Olympic sports, right? I think we're just actually kicking the tires with rEvolution and some of our other agencies on how we'll show up in football this year, but we're simultaneously figuring out our strategy beyond that. And actually, one of the reasons we love the Big Ten is because, you know, women's sports is important to us like it is with every brand right now, right? And they create a little bit of a one-stop shop to get your, you know, your football play, but also lean heavily into the women's volleyball, women's basketball. So I think next for us in the Big Ten is really just, you're going to start seeing us show up a little bit more consistently in other sports.
And community.
And community as well. Community's been a big focus. And to Tyler's credit, like when we've had ongoing conversations, right, like Larry keeps mentioning platforms, we keep pushing them on like, give us additional platforms to realize, you know, and they have a marketing team too who has ideas and they want to build them out, right? And so I do think we've established a nice synergistic connection between helping us realize a broader strategy that might include things like women's sports, and then helping them realize things like community efforts or places they want to go into as well, but that need a brand to come in and help provide the support to actually do so.
I can't ask you what your favorite Big Ten campus is?
Iowa. You got two Hawkeye alums here.
There you go. Is that right?
You asked which sport? It's wrestling, obviously.
Okay,
That's what we should
wrestling,
put more
okay.
with.
Makes it very easy for ticket distribution.
Right, I love it. I love it. So let's end with this. Partnership obviously works. As this audience leaves and goes back to their offices on Friday, what's an attribute of your partnership that made it work that they should take when they think about future partnerships with brands or properties?
Well, I mean, I said it a little bit earlier, but I strongly believe that the word partnership, it's true. You know, look, there's no doubt that these conferences today need to generate more revenue. And Tyler, I love him, but yeah, he's expensive. But he's proven it, and he provides value for that. And that's something that I would highly encourage is, you know, if you think about it, is that the Big Ten and this partnership has worked because they do provide what we ask questions, they listen, and they come back with solutions. So I think it's really important to be thinking about that, truly working together. And you see it with our activations and our media partners.
Push each other.
Push each other.
Yeah, I would say, at least from a Discover standpoint, right? Like we mentioned how our emphasis is going deeper. So, you know, a wholesale new sponsorship is always a little bit of a Herculean undertaking, especially trying to get through finance and check all the gates. So anything that feels like complementary to how we're showing up, you know, originally, or with a partner like a Big Ten, or even with the NHL, right? So if it's tapping into an untapped part of the marketplace that we might not be getting there, right? Like I think natural extensions to where we're already showing up are probably the path of least resistance, and would align probably well with our strategy of trying to like own totally hockey or be like a college-specific platform or brand for consumers.
I would say, one, we want to make sure that we're growing together. And so even as an example of that and have line of sight into each other's roadmaps, of course, we were both trying to drive revenue, but before women's sports was really taking off from a PR standpoint, I'll say, you know, we were activating in both men's and women's college basketball games and at the tournament. And that was important because I think we were showing the Big Ten that we wanted to be kind of at the table with them as they were thinking ahead. And so that's why if we get a hint at what's coming, then they know that we're kind of a serious partner, take things seriously and consider the opportunities. So I do think the multi-year kind of growth-oriented, everybody at the table talking business to business, what we need is really important.
Well, she set me up well before. Let's give them a round of applause, but give me 1 second. Thank you. And as Amy said, you know, the growth of women's sports, one thing that we're very proud of at SBJ, I mentioned at the top of the event, was that we've launched an SBJ women's sports newsletter every other week, and it's been incredibly well received, and I will put our coverage of the business side of women's sports up against anybody out there in the business. And one of the persons who's led that, and she's really been such a strong advocate, and she's so talented in all of that, is Jen Azara, and she is going to lead our next session. So I'll introduce her and have her bring her session, or her panelists, up to the stage. Thank you all.